I love autumn when the trees start going into dormancy because that's the time we can work on them. So I'm going to show you what we do with our beech trees. These beech trees have been growing here for the last 15 years or more. Some of them were already about half an inch thick and about a meter tall, but we cut them down and they have had training for 5 to 10 years. And it does take a while to get a good tree. So I'll show you the next stage as to what we do with these trees. Some of them are large, some of them are small, but we'll take some into the back greenhouse and I'll show you the next stage of development. So let's continue. I've brought the beech from outside the nursery into our workshop where we do the videos, and we have 7 of them. I may bring one more to show you examples. The beauty of our nursery is that we have so much material that I can show you so many things. We don't just have one. So let's start and see where we go. So this program today is covering 2 topics. How to make good taper, because taper is all important in bonsai, because if you don't have good taper, the tree just looks chopped. And then how to produce ramification. Taper and ramification are terms which are bandied around, but not many people really understand it, and even fewer people understand how to create it. But there is a way of doing it. It does involve a bit of patience, but it can be done. So let's look at taper to begin with. Now, looking at each of them in turn, let's get some of these out of the way. This one here, let me get it out of the pot, then you can see the roots as well. These have been growing in these flower pots for the last 3 years. And then what I did 3 years ago was to chop the top off. This tree was about a meter tall. I chopped it down to about 30 centimeter. And where I chopped it, a new shoot grew. And that is what we call the new leader. And that is what creates the taper. So that was cut 3 years ago. And this branch here was cut only last year, so that I've got another taper going up there. So if you keep doing it, this is how you get taper. Now, I will now cut it there, and then that will stop it growing from the side. And that will continue to grow. I'm not in a rush to cut this off because the longer I make it grow, the stronger the shoot gets and the taper will be better. So you can see this is very good taper. This blends into that. And all you need to do at this stage is, the next topic is the ramification. The more you tip the ends of the shoots, as simple as that. Tip all the ends without cutting hard back. And by tipping it, you're going to force the side shoots to grow. You can do a little bit of wiring. I can show you how to improve this. And if we just get some of this, I'm not going to waste time looking for scrap wire because that's what I usually do. And we will show you how we can start getting the branches to move in the direction that we want to. I'm not taking the wire right to the end. I'm just doing very loose wiring because it's only to guide the branch in a certain direction that I want. Because I have so many trees, I can't do them all, but what I can do, I will do. We literally have hundreds of these trees. And not only grown in pots, we also grow some of them in the ground. And while they're growing in the ground, we do exactly the same thing to encourage good taper. So again, the basic design is a triangular shape. Now, this branch needs to be brought this way to create the triangle. If I don't bring it that way, it goes that way. The triangle is not so prominent. So let me, again, to save wire, I don't like waste. So very roughly, we are not doing a finished tree. The tree is still in training, so we're just guiding the branch in the correct direction. You can do sophisticated wiring, but while we are growing these trees in the field, who's going to look at it, you know? So that is the basic shape we've got for that tree. So that's quite nice like that. So taper and ramification in one go. Let's look at each of these trees in turn to give you some ideas to how we deal with each of them. Oh, God. Of course, growing them in flower pots restricts the growth to a large extent, so they don't grow so fast. So this tree again, rather than to grow it at that angle, remember what I showed you in another video where I'm talking of planting things at the correct angle, because the angle of planting makes a big difference to the look of the tree. So with this tree, I could take it out in spring and plant it in a plastic training pot and let it grow in this direction. So again, if you look, come close, you'll see that is where the cut was made 3 years ago, and you can just let it rot. I'm not too worried. You see how it's callousing. Callousing means the new growth that comes to cover the old scar. And if you use a wen cutter or a hybrid cutter to carve away, the taper will get even better and the callus will heal over much smoother. So just by cutting that, you see the new leader has grown. So that will grow in that direction. Earlier this year I cut over there, so it's grown in this direction. And if I don't want it to grow any taller, I can cut it there to make the taper go that way. So this I will reduce a little bit. Again, I can, this is almost a saleable tree with bits of wire these, bring them around. So this has become even better. Again, tip all the ends. So that tree will end up like that, you know, with a nice back branch. I've got to make sure I get more of a conical shape. There you go. So that is the second one done. We'll go through all of them because we have so many. As I always say, repetition is very, very important. You learn just by repeating the process. So this one, now you can see these are all, you won't believe it, the same age tree. Some of them are thicker than others. It's hard to believe that this and this is the same age. I don't know why that is so. It's like human beings. Some grow big, some grow small. So that's where I cut. You see, that was cut made. This was probably cut only like a couple of years ago. That's died now. So that is the new leader growing. So that's going that way. Now I could again have a choice. If I want that to be the leader to get movement, I could do that and make this the new leader. So this is a very simple tree. Or if you didn't want to, you can grow it up that way and have the tree growing upright with the tree like that. So there's so many options. So this again is a very credible looking bonsai. So the more you tip it, more branches will come there. So you'll get more ramification. So that is number 3 done. Let's go through all of them in turn. Some are more difficult than others. So this one here, now this one is a rather weird one. You can see it's got like a double head. Now some people may criticize it and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, having 2 heads. But it looks quite nice. Don't forget that in bonsai, you're trying to create trees that look natural. Don't forget that you're always trying to copy or replicate nature. The more you can replicate nature, the more natural the tree looks, so the tree is more convincing. If you make it look too artificial, too plastic, for want of a better term, the tree will not look so nice. So even the tree like that, with that funny candelabra type style, is quite convincing as bonsai. I would probably leave it. You know, someone will want to buy it. There is one fault here. If you notice that the roots are very high, where you get a situation like this, you can either tuck a rock underneath there to make it look like a false root over rock, or if you didn't want to, you can plant it deeper over there to let the root go there. So I could do that when I plant it in the spring, plant it at that level. And if I cut it off there, the bottom part, this part, will become a small tree, like so. So you could do that. In fact, I will do that in preparation because there's enough root there to sustain the tree. So if you just cut it there, it will grow into a nice short broom style tree. But perhaps when I come to repotting, I'll remind you again because I'll revert to this tree again. So that is number 4. Now let's look at another tricky one. Now this one is also quite interesting. So this is very interesting. So it's interesting because it's been distressed. Look at the roots, weird roots. And it's got a bit of a scar there, which is all quite nice. I could probably take that off, I don't know, and just plant it a bit deeper. That is rather odd there. Oh, I could make a feature, but I won't rush to do it just yet. Now this tree is funny because it's going that way, and this is rather straight. So what do? We could do a better taper. See, this is crying out to be the new leader. And this is very straight, so that is not much use. So what I will do is I will take that off. I'll just use the Wen cutter or the hybrid cutter to show you what I mean about getting a better taper. So let me show you this tool. We call this a Wen cutter. Some people call it a knob cutter. I don't like the term, but Wen cutter is completely round. There's also a tool called a hybrid cutter, which is like a cross between a branch cutter, concave branch cutter, and the Wen cutter. But the Wen cutter is the traditional tool for gouging the tree. That means you get deep into the wood, and when the bark heals over, what we call callus, it will heal over that concave part. You see how efficient this tool is. These, by the way, are some of our Herons branded tools made in China. You see, that's how you use the Wen cutter. And that will heal over. You can use some cut paste. With large cuts, you can use cut paste. But sometimes deciduous trees just heal themselves. So that's how I make a new taper. And you see, I'm not going to rush to cut this up because the longer I leave this to pull, the thicker this will get, so this will blend quicker. Ideally, at some stage, I can cut it down to there so the tree won't be so tall. But I'm going to let this grow because as it grows and pulls the sap, this will make it thicker. I will get a better taper. I can then decide what to take off from there. If it causes inverse taper, which it might do, then I might take it off. So let's bite the bullet, as they say. That may become another tree, so I'm not rushing to take that off. And then I can also do this with the Wen cutter. I can do this. So these are all just general principles that you may or may not know. So that heals well, so you'll get a nice smooth thing. So I've eliminated that bad inverse taper growing at that point. So I can see something else. I can cut some more. So get a better taper there. So that's how you make the taper. All right, so this is the other one. And let's move on to yet another one because we have 7 examples. So this is a good example of a good taper. So you see what we've done here. If you come close, again, as I say, this was cut 3 years ago, but I cut it there and another shoot grew there. So I've got to decide whether I want 2 or not. Probably not, because it looks odd with 2 heads there. That's a case where it certainly shouldn't be there. So let me cut that off. So let me show you what I'm about to do. So when you come to cutting a branch, this is just over an inch thick. There are several tools you can use. You can either use this, what we call the silky saw. This is a very effective tool. We've used this for years. Very, very sharp. It cuts almost like butter. So that's one option. The other option we have, I don't know whether you can buy this, but we get this in the UK. And this is a very effective long handle lopper. So there's a lot of leverage. So you can simply with this cut it off like that. So that's another option, very effective. And then of course, my favorite tool at the moment is the small mini chainsaw. So the mini chainsaw is effective as well. So there you are. So you cut it, you see it's already dead in there. And again, if you go around with your wen cutter or knob cutter, you can pare down the side and you'll get a very smooth healing effect over there. So again, this could be the new leader there, but I'm not in a rush to cut this off because the longer I leave it, the stronger this gets. So I get a better taper quicker. So I will let this grow instead of cutting it off. There's always a temptation to cut it there, but the longer you leave it, the quicker this will thicken and you will get a much better taper. So that is what I will do with this one. So not touching the top. So this is where you've got to be a bit patient. So the last of the 7 that we have here, this again is a rather weird one. And it's almost like a natural broom style. It's tending to make 2 leaders, as you can see from here. And it's rather congested. But for my money, I would probably leave it. See, this is rotting away naturally over there. Far too often, I feel that many people try to make their trees so perfect that they look almost plastic. Because trees do grow in nature like this, I would love to make this a rather unconventional type of broom tree. But because there's so much ramification, the ramification has been developed simply by constantly cutting. So if I were to do no more than this, this is what I would do. If you keep doing this throughout the year as the tree grows, and this will make a nice broom style tree. Broom style tree. Anyone would give their right arm for it. You can do a bit of wiring to arrange the branches, but if that back leader does annoy you, you can consider taking it off. In fact, what I might do, you can see how it's forked over here. I might just do this. If it annoys anyone who's watching the video, I'll do that. Okay, it becomes less prominent. So this has become a rather natural looking broom style. So that is how I would deal with this, nothing more than that. And one final tree, I'll go to the field and bring it back on a wheelbarrow and show you another tree that we've achieved in just 3 years. So this is another beech that I created the leader 3 years ago, but it was a much larger tree. So we put it in this large plastic training pot and we just left it in our growing fields to grow in the pot. And you can see everything is so lush here that the weeds grow as strong as the trees. But no matter, that's not a problem. The roots are quite interesting. And you see it's been damaged here by some scarring. Maybe the mower got there. And although I planted it this way, the front could really be here. So you see how the taper has been developed in the last 3 years. And where it's been callousing, I can improve it by taking more of this dead off. And if I take the dead off, the callus will heal over the wood even better. I don't want to spend ages showing you this because it's not the purpose of the exercise. So you know what I mean. You do this. And where you get a lump, if you like it, keep it. If you don't like it, again with the wen cutter you can get rid of it and it will heal smoother. So that is what the wen cutter does. But some people like these knobbly bits. Even that, if you didn't like, you can get rid of that. And if you wanted even better taper, you can cut all that off. You see, I haven't got round to it, but this is what you need to do. But when it calluses, it'll knock off the dead wood. It will eventually. Nature has its own way, and the dead bits will be pushed away. So that will be the future apex. Again, if I didn't want it to grow so tall, I can cut it off there and make the taper go in that direction. In fact, I might just do that. So rather than keep letting it get too tall, I can do this. So this is a constant refining process. We assess it as we go along. So this tree, apart from the cut I made 3 years ago, has been growing on the nursery maybe like 10 or 12 years. And in 10 or 12 years, this tree is nowhere near ready to sell yet. So that is how I developed that one. And if I didn't want this bit, I can probably knock this off. So something else I would like to point out, if you leave too many branches growing at one point, you get what is called inverse taper, because all the energies go back into that part and it swells this portion. So you can get that inverse taper effect. So I might, but then you see, if I wanted to look further, I can even make that into a future leader. Whoever buys this tree, they may want to do that, this bit as a leader, and keep it as a short tree, and then get rid of this branch. So there's so many options. I don't usually like to foreclose the options because I've got to remind myself that it's not me who's going to have these trees eventually. Whoever buys these trees, they like to put their own stamp on it. So they may want to do their own thing. But for my money at the moment, the tree is going to go in that direction. And that is how the tree will eventually look with this as the front. So this is a much larger version compared to some of these. And I dare say that these would have been just a couple of years older than these because they were grown in the ground for a long time to thicken it. So I hope you've learned a little bit about ramification and creating taper from this video. So I hope you've enjoyed this one.